Welcome to the Seeking Truth and Justice series featuring Lawrence Lucas. My name is Gary Johnson, sometimes known as Mr. Producer. Mr. Lucas, I'm going to throw it over to you.
Thank you, Gary Johnson. And I also want to thank CJ Johnson as well as Andrew White. We have two young people on this morning, and I just want to get a idea as to what they think and what they're thinking, and what maybe what young people should be thinking. And one of the questions that I'm going to be asking is how long have they been interested or involved in civil rights at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and why? That's one. Two, I'll be asking why should others even care about this issue and what's happening to Black farmers and abuse of women at the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The other question is, do you recommend others to do the same thing that you all are doing? And the last question that I would confront you all with this morning is: do you trust your government to tell you the truth? So, in this very political and very volatile uh, environment that we are in, and with this president and this series of events that's coming off in November. Uh, what do you all think? And if you want to, each one of you give maybe a brief introduction. And Andrew, I'll start with you out there in University of Chicago, and CJ, I'll follow with you. Uh, Andrew White, welcome to Seeking Truth and Justice. And thank you also for coming on this early morning, kind of giving us a little overview as to some of the things that you care about. Andrew, introduce yourself and tell us a little about yourself real quick.
All right, thank you, sir. Yes, I'd like to thank everyone for bringing me on to speak. I'm very honored. My name is Andrew White. I am currently a master's student in public policy at the University of Chicago. I have, a strong interest in studying like human institutions, particularly when they affect Black people, and I'm very excited to get to learn more about how other people go about this work. I consider myself to be like completely a novice, but I'm very excited to be able to participate with you all very much.
Thank you very much. CJ Johnson. CJ, um, I'm hoping that, do you hear me?
I can hear you now. If you're
Yes,
talking to me.
indeed.
Okay, I'm back. Look, I froze for a second. So yeah, as for introduction, my name is CJ. I'm most known for being a musician from the DC area, singer, songwriter for the Cortland Experiment Band. But what most people don't see behind the scenes is I have been involved in activism in the community since pretty much my college days. And the USDA struggle specifically, the past few years after I met you, Mr. Lawrence Lucas, and you helped enlighten me to the details of the specifics of that struggle, which is really opened my eyes to a lot of the details of how systematic corruption works and how the government really gets over on not fulfilling its campaign promises to its citizens. And the USDA is a prime example of that, especially in terms of how it affects the Black community specifically and the racial dynamics in the country. So that is in the past few years specifically involved in that part of the struggle.
Aren't you a co-host on a podcast?
Yes, I'm also a radio host too for we have a sports show every Sunday on Radio 1, 95.9 FM, 1450 AM. It's the Talk to Trey Sports Report. So I'm also a radio co-host and political commentator for Black Men in America. So try to stay busy.
And the
Well,
Thought
you're
Brothers.
staying
And
busy,
the
but
Thought Brothers.
you've also produced a album. Tell us a little, just quickly, a little about the album.
Yes, I just dropped an album with my band. It's kind of like an indie rock outfit, 4-song EP. that is on all streaming platforms, so on Spotify, Apple Music. So it's got a little bit of funk rock, a little bit of punk music, a little bit of just different indie rock flavors. And I'm also working on a solo album, which will be done by the end of the year. So I've been going around performing that. I was in Virginia on Friday performing in Old Town Alexandria. I had a lot of fun with the people out there. And then I was in Waldorf, Maryland, doing another show on Saturday, performing some of the new songs. So there's going to be a lot of fun music. That's going to be more of a kind of like a throwback to some disco vibes for the newer music, and have some go-go flavor and some things like that. So I got some fun stuff coming for that.
Now, what being a mainstay on Seeking Truth and Justice on our TS radio show monthly. Thank you very much.
To it earlier in my introduction, but only been maybe during this Biden administration, the past 4 years, that I've gotten really involved in the specific struggle of the USDA. And it really highlights an issue that I was bringing up with the Biden administration even before he was elected, that he would govern like this, and that these types of issues would be a problem, where he would pay lip service to certain groups, but not lift a finger to actually follow through on any of that, or even more so, go in the other direction, like picking a Tom Vilsack is a very Joe Biden-esque thing to do in terms of public policy and how he responds to his voter base, in terms of his influence to the people versus his influence to the giant corporations that line his pockets and his donors and things like that.
Thank you. CJ, okay, well, so you kind of gave a pretty good overview as to why you're doing this as well. Is there a specific reason other than what you said as to why you are involved in this issue with the Black farmers and USDA?
Another reason is, like I said, it's a very specific issue that affects our community as well. I'm a big advocate for health and wellness these days, and a big part of health and wellness is healthy food, being able to having access to healthy food, affordable healthy food, and the Black farmer struggle is a direct pipeline to that for many people, and for the generational wealth in our community. So it's more than just being a Biden administration and a political corruption issue, but it becomes a cultural issue, it becomes a public health and wellness issue. And I think that is also very important, that people realize that all those things are deeply connected.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Andrew White, the same question. How long have you been interested and involved in civil rights at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and
I
why?
think I like living in suburban Chicagoland. I live in a suburb of Chicago, not actually in Chicago for any Chicagoans out there. I know people will have opinions on that. Um, Even though it's true that my ancestors were farmers, my grandmother was raised on a farm in Mississippi before she moved to Chicago as part of the tail end of the Great Migration. So I didn't know very much about the Black people who had continued to farm and who were still fighting to own and work their land. And as part of some work I was doing during my undergraduate degree at the University of Illinois, friend of mine, Jacopo Di Marinis, came across a lot of information about Black farmers, introduced the issue to me. And when I saw the opportunity to, hopefully make at least some small difference, I saw that there was opportunity to help, because this specific issue is one in which the United States Department of Agriculture is continuing to perpetuate systemic harms, but it's a government agency, and therefore it's a little bit less uh, nuanced than some things are. USDA should change its behavior. The issue is, how can we get it to do so? And it's something that's, I think, very compelling about an issue that is so clear cut in terms of its injustice.
You got your other fellow students involved. Just give us a brief overview as to how you did that and why.
Yeah. So with Chicago Area Peace Action, UIUC chapter, at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, we were looking for different political campaigns to try to support and advocate for We had, at the time, we were looking at a couple of different things. We looked at Clean Energy Jobs Act at one point, which unfortunately was only somewhat successful overall. We weren't, we learned a lot from that experience, and we were looking for other legislation that was inspiring to us, that was important to us, and we came across the Justice for Black Farmers Act. And the USDA Coalition of Minority Employees, of which Mr. Lucas is, of course, President Emerit, was with the Justice for Black Farmers group, was doing a fantastic work on that, and we wanted to participate. In addition, there are a number of people who had joined our organization that were looking for experience, looking for opportunities to learn more about advocacy work, and they were interested in contributing to this. There was a brief letter writing campaign, and we spent a lot of time talking to Mr. Lucas and learning about the issues facing Black farmers. And I think that a lot of people learned a lot about some of the, what's the word? The specifics of working with people and learning about how you can help them. And I think that's how people became interested, because there were so many opportunities to learn, which, were very valuable to us as people looking to get into advocacy work, or, just to help out.
Why did you contact Congressman Danny Davis's office in Washington, as well as out in the field? Just quickly, why did you do that?
We were looking for Congressman Davis to make statements in support of the Black farmers. Although I'm not in his district, I do go to school in the University of Chicago, and he is a representative of that particular area, just not that specific district. So there's an opportunity there to try to build connections between the Black farmers in predominantly rural areas and Chicago, which is, of course, quite urban.
Thank you. Why should others care about this issue? I'll start with CJ, and then as soon as CJ finish, Andrew, chime in right behind him. Why should others care about this issue?
As I alluded to before, because this issue connects to so many issues that I think a lot of people don't realize, and issues they think that might not affect them, that it will affect them, even in terms of the fact that if the government will do this to Black farmers, they'll do that to you and whatever group that you care about, even if this is not an issue that you felt like is important. Or in terms of, like I said, the ripple effect that it has on, like I said, the different wealth production, the what it does, the impact on communities that the Black farmers not getting the justice that they deserve will have. So I would just caution people to always keep that in mind, and that's why they should care. I have to answer that question a lot, because a lot of the younger generation has been hit with a wave of apathy because of how our politics has gone for so long, and it's really hard to get people to care. So you have to lobby people and to explain to them why it's important to actually care, because people have been beaten down for so long. They don't see a lot of hope in the political system.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic explanation. And I would also add that, sort of based off what CJ was saying, like when an organization like the U.S. Department of Agriculture does not adhere to its mandate in terms of supporting all farmers, that's an opportunity to get a better understanding of how the government can sometimes stray from its path. And I think that for Black farmers specifically, there has been a more or less a centuries-long effort happening sort of at the outskirts of society, just to push them off the land through racial terrorism, through the practices that have led to the creation of big agriculture, which isn't all, negative, but we have to acknowledge that these are massive forces that are able to, in small but, well, emergently small and eventually cataclysmic ways, change people's lives, destroy people's ancestral land, and change the way that people economically interact with society. And I think that it's important to see how the USDA has reached this point, and to use it as a way to understand the government's potential weaknesses and be able to address them and support everyone, because that's what the government is supposed to do.
Well, Thank you very much. Why should young people or others be concerned about this as well? Why?
Like I said,
CJ.
a lot of the reasons we just laid out, because like those problems are going to affect them whether they like it or not. As they say, even if you try not to do politics, politics will do you regardless. So you're going to have to get involved if you want healthy, affordable food, if you want the same opportunities, and if you want the people in power to actually respect your voice, so you can actually get your demands met. They need to care, because the only way you're going to actually get any movement on anything is a movement of people in some sort of organized organization. So that's why young people should care, because if you don't care, that's just going to make it easier for the forces in power, those giant corporations, those people making the decisions that are harming people. That just makes it easier for them to do what they need to do without any resistance.
Andrew, the question is do you recommend others to do the same, and why? What is your feeling on that?
I think there's a lot of people with a lot of different skills. I think everyone should try to cultivate a spirit of kindness and a spirit of care. So I think that not a spirit, an ethic of kindness and care. So I think that part of that is thinking about how other people are feeling, thinking about their needs and desires. And I think this is also a good way to cultivate that. Black farmers have issues that are uh, well, of course, there's definitely nuance, but there are some very specific harms that can be identified. And there's ways for a lot of people to get involved just in speaking to their Congress people. They can write letters. There's just a lot of different opportunities to sort of weigh in on this debate. And so I think a lot of people should try to do, maybe not what I'm doing. Maybe someone would be better at making lots of phone calls. Well, I guess I have done some of that. Or maybe they could uh, take out a different avenue. Maybe they can, whatever their job is or whatever their passions are, they can make music. You know, they can write shows. There's so many ways to talk about this issue, but I think everyone should get involved in some way if they can, if they have the bandwidth. I think it's good for the soul and it's good for the community.
Interesting that you all live in two different parts of the United States. You're working on your graduate work at the University of Chicago, and CJ already started his family. A man that is very extremely active in civil rights and politics. It just seems to be here you are hundreds of miles away in Chicago, and here CJ in Washington. You all have a strong feeling about the government and what the government should be doing. I have another question to ask, and that is, do you trust your government to tell you the truth about what's going on in this country? And if you have a question, if you disagree, state why you disagree. Either one of you all can chime in anytime you want to.
I don't know how much time do we have in terms of do I trust the government? No, absolutely not. Like absolutely not, because I've seen what good reporters uncover so many lies that the government has told in general, and not just and having a general understanding of how politics works now with the implementation of Citizens United, with the amount of money in politics that the politicians are basically empty suit puppets for giant mega corporations, and those call the shots for our government, and they will do whatever they need to do in the name of profit margins. And that is the religion of the United States. It's Wall Street. It's the military industrial complex. And they will do anything to keep those institutions going at all costs, whether it's supporting a genocide that most of the country doesn't support, whether it's again like going against the wishes of Black farmers and picking the pick that they didn't want the most in Tom Vilsack, and doing that in other agencies and departments as well, going against the activists that actually got them elected, because that's what politicians do. And if you just watch any good interview with the State Department these days, you'll see that you can't really believe what the government says when they're backing ridiculous things in Israel. They're doing all types of things all over the world there's enough evidence to say that the government is not always going to be truthful. Not that there aren't good people working hard to try to do good work in the government, but as a whole, you can't take anything that comes at face value without doing some really, really good reporting. And that's becoming harder and harder with social media and the amount of misinformation and AI and things that are going around these days. So it really does take some media literacy to be able to sort through the different stories and to figure out what's going on nowadays, because the amount of propaganda that is out on both sides, on all sides, is really, really getting concerning.
I have the same question for you, Andrew, out there in Chicago. Do you trust the government to tell you the truth?
I think, well, CJ laid out a lot of, I think, a lot of great wisdom there. And I think what I want to focus on actually would be media literacy, because I think, as CJ was saying, the United States government is a massive institution with lots of different moving parts. And there are a lot of things the United States government is doing that honestly, I think in the past it's 1000% true, unfortunately, that the United States government has hidden information from its domestic population and from abroad, including referencing a number of different tragedies affecting Black people, other people of color, poor people, and that's just the reality. And I think to an extent, the United States government does still engage in this behavior, but I think there have been a lot of strides made in terms of transparency and holding politicians accountable. But at the same time, it's true that sometimes politicians will say things that are demonstrably untrue and have received the backing of a party, received the backing of a department, even as there are other people in the government who may acknowledge the truth. For example, there's been this disastrous lie about Haitian immigrants saying that they were eating pets, which is just complete nonsense and anti-Black. But there are politicians pumping this lie into the internet, onto our radio systems, and that's why I agree with CJ. It's important to have media literacy, media literacy just means that when someone tells you something, you can take into account the context in which they are speaking to you and try to find a second opinion, because it's important to recognize that there's many different ways to give someone information. The people don't have to necessarily lie to you to leave out vital pieces of the puzzle. So I think that it is important to be critical of every institution that we engage with, which definitely includes the government. Now, at the same time, I do want to caution things such as I trust the government about the safety of vaccines. I trust the government about well, I think that's a good example, actually. I think that sometimes distrust in the government can be created by other institutions, oftentimes themselves governmental, that can make us feel as if we need to avoid any information coming from a state representative, which I don't necessarily agree with. But I think that we should, CJ said, have a critical eye to all information that we receive and be mindful of the context in which it is being given to us.
Oh, thank you very much. Another question came to mind while you all were talking. Since we're asking questions about our government and seeing that we are in and volatile political environments that I've lived through, and I'm 86 years old. And tell us, what do you all think about what is going on in Washington politics and with this campaign?
Well, like I said, it's not looking great. Honestly, if you're looking at the outlook of where we're going either way, honestly, things are way too polarized. So that's a problem. Regardless of the results of the election, Donald Trump is likely to not concede the election regardless. So we're going to likely have another January 6th type of situation, probably a little bigger and probably a little bit more, rowdier this time around. So that's going to be a problem. Regardless, in terms of the policies, although I think Kamala has better policies just in general, I mean, just as a sane person looking at both people's policies, they're not great and they don't really address a lot of the problems that are going on in America, like at the face value. And Trump is just a disaster all around. That would not be great for anyone other than those giant multinational corporations I was talking about before, as they'll get more tax breaks and everybody else will probably likely get nothing, just like Trump's first term. Beyond that, so again, for the people, like I know, again, I think Kamala has some okay plans. But the issue with that is the Democrats are known to not follow through or fight for those plans. So it's hard for me to get excited about a plan because last time they proposed the $15 minimum wage, they said the Senate parliamentarians' suggestion stopped them. So if that's enough to stop you from fighting for your policy, then I mean it doesn't give me a lot of hope. Even when you lay out good ideas, I've seen that you're not willing to lift a finger to implement them, as the Republicans will ruthlessly do anything to implement their ideas. So it seems like the game is coming is starting to get old to people. I think people are starting to see that a lot of this is political theater. If you compare Trump and Kamala's policies, they aren't that different. They have the same Israel policy. They have the same pretty much healthcare policy, which is leave Obamacare in place. They have the same. So even though they differ on these culture war issues like gay rights and abortion rights are basically the two things that they disagree upon, they really agree upon everything else. Even if you watch the debate, Kamala's argument is we deported more people at the border and we supported the Republican border bill. Like we want the same thing that you want at the border. So the disagreements, they're all this, it's theater. And a lot of this isn't helping people. The minimum wage is still $7.25 in the year 2024. And nobody's got a plan for that. Nobody's got a healthcare plan. Trump was on the debate stage and literally said he doesn't have a healthcare plan. He's got plans of a plan to come up with a plan, even though the election is 2 months away. So it's showing that these people aren't very serious about addressing the actual issues that Americans are suffering with. Like that, no one has a plan. They can talk about the inflation, but I haven't heard a plan for anybody beyond Kamala. She had a plan to do the price gouging for groceries, but in general, housing prices, healthcare, childcare, things like that. Ending the needless wars and genocide that are making things dangerous for us around the world, making us more hated abroad, making things less safe for our servicemen abroad and things like that. So, and not being able to be responsive to the voter base. I think what really gives the game away are some of the issues, like the minimum wage in Israel, where 70% or 80% of a voter base can want something, and yet it still won't get done in what is supposed to be a democracy. So it shows you that the pressure from people is not matching the pressure coming from the donors, and we have a real issue with money in our politics. And until we address that, it's going to be really hard to clean up anything if we're stuck in a two-party system where both parties are owned by the same corporations.
Thank you, Andrew. What do you think about the present political environment and politics? Do you trust your politicians, or should
I
we
think,
trust your politicians?
yeah, I think, oh man, honestly, CJ covered a lot of stuff that I would definitely like to point out. I 100% agree about the effect that multinational companies have on the United States government. And in fact, a lot of the stuff that he's referenced is what's so incredible to me is that it's not even like something that people are trying to hide. Each politician, in order to make it to the national stage, needs to receive millions of dollars in donations, and it just it's almost elementary school math to recognize that if the only way for you to become elected and stay elected is to receive millions of dollars, and if 99% of Americans don't have $1 million to donate, then people who have millions of dollars to donate get to have a bigger voice than everybody else, which is, blatantly undemocratic. And unfortunately, there are several institutional factors that have made it harder for us to remove this insane power that money has in politics. But I agree that is something that it's been very frustrating to me. I also agree that the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, while I think the Democrats are much better on at least half of the issues that I care about, on the other half, they're about the same as Republicans, or Republicans, from my perspective, don't seem to have a policy platform. As CJ said during the debate, former President Trump was quite evasive, I think, about discussing a healthcare plan, even though he continuously says that we need to have a better one than what healthcare for all has been. even though he said he has ideas of a plan. I have ideas of plans too, but that doesn't mean I can implement them because those are just ideas. You have to write things down and discuss them with people who know what they're talking about. And I think that it also was mentioned, I did not realize how much harm the United States does abroad. The United States has, in my opinion, uh, consistently chosen to make political international choices that support a small group of people who have a lot of money, which, to be clear, is not me trying to say that there's some sort of shadowy cabal or trying to make any anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. These people are just very rich people who you can look up on the Forbes list. These are just very wealthy people who donate to super PACs. There's nothing shadowy or secret about them. They're people like you and I. They just happen to have millions of dollars. There's no sort of secret cult going on. It's all actually very out in the open. And I think that it's been very heartbreaking to me to see that the United States has failed to protect human life and to promote peace and justice throughout the world, or at least not to do any harm. And I think that frustratingly, I have seen that even though many people have tried to push Vice President Harris to just make some statements like respecting the security of Israeli people, but also respecting security of Palestinian people, working for an arms embargo to try to encourage the production of peace, or again, at least do no harm, so that fewer civilians will be killed in their homes, and also advocating for return of the hostages so that those people can return to their families, which I think the United States government has consistently failed to do in a way that is meaningful and promotes, again, peace and justice and end to occupation for Palestinians and Israelis. And I think this actually does tie into the issue with the Black farmers, because again, there are huge, big money interests that are invested in, one, ensuring that in general, small farmers do not have the ability to support themselves, because our entire agricultural economy is built on big farmers being able to get labor for cheaper from smaller farmers. And two, when we have chosen to go down the route of reparative justice, there have been countersuits. There have been counter lawsuits from people claiming reverse racism, which is almost always completely fabricated and again, cynically launched by conservative interests that just want to ensure that Black people can't have things. Anyway, my overall point, though, is that yes, I think that it's important to vote. I am going to vote for Vice President Harris because everything I've said in criticism of the Democrats, the Republicans can avoid criticism because they don't even care what I think. They would rather destroy me and destroy all of us. I shouldn't say destroy. That's fear mongering. I think that they would rather avoid concrete policy initiatives and instead engage in harmful rhetoric and focus on, as CJ said, lining the pockets of their donors, which at the very least is something that we should avoid. I don't think that they're trying to destroy America or whatever. I think that they're more cynically focused on making money, and they're able to say whatever they need to say to ensure they continue making money. At least with the Democrats, I believe we have a chance to push them towards better policy priorities, even though there's much more they need to do.
Hello to all, and thank you for the welcome, and hello to all of you again as well. It's a privilege to be on with you all. My name is Pamela Messel. I have 25 years as a firefighter on the front lines, 20 of those years on a hotshot crew, responding to the most dangerous, risky parts of the fire line, doing large scale and small scale burnouts and quite a bit of chainsaw work. Is a real small little nutshell version of that. I also have a decade and a half working on an ambulance and an ER. So a first responder to the core of who I am. And I chose to go the wildland fire route in USDA a long time ago. My career started in 1997. So that's a real short little snippet about me. My blood runs with first responder blood, as well as equality in the workplace. So that's a little snippet about me. Would you like me to go into the questions, Lawrence, next?
Well, what I'd like for you to do is go into the questions, and you just let it flow and cover all three, but also mention of the experience that we both experienced with going to Washington during the Obama administration and bringing to the attention the sexual and the Forest Service agriculture, all
Okay,
kinds of abuses. And but you firsthand have experienced it.
will do. Thank you. So when I first started, I was entry level, so I was a worker. I wasn't involved, with people in the office that much. I was always in the field. And as I moved up, I started to realize that there was a severe lack of equality as far as, especially for Black firefighters, to which there are hardly any at all in USDA on the front lines. They will put them in the office, but will not give them opportunities on the fire line. And I think that's clear by a lot of the photos nationwide for decades now. So basically, as I moved up, I saw that this was a really big systemic problem within the U.S. Forest Service, where I particularly worked within USDA. Back in 2016, women prior to me, like Denise Rice and Lisa Donnelly and yourself, Lawrence, went to Congress and testified and risked it all in their career and livelihoods and were retaliated against severely after that. I'll circle back to that in a minute about Denise Rice. In 2018, women went forward. Shannon Reed is one of them, testified as far as to the depth of the abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse on women in USDA, U.S. Forest Service, including firefighters. And fast forward after that, I talked to Congress and spoke with the chief of the Forest Service in August of 2019. I was personally invited by Vicki Christensen, Chief Vicki Christensen at the time, to how do we stop this problem of harassment. I gave her very diplomatic answers to how to stop this. The main thing being accountability for someone in Tom Vilsack's position and Randy Moore's position, who is the current chief of the Forest Service. And she basically had no response for me, never returned my calls, never returned my personal emails reaching out for help. I went through physical abuse myself in Nevada. Denise Rice also came to advocate for me 3 years after she testified in Congress, and she was physically hit and injured. So she went through assault and battery on federal time in a federal workplace, coming in to be an advocate for me as a female firefighter, and she's a female firefighter as well. So we're talking about actual federal crimes while these people are being paid tax dollars, all of our tax dollars, to happen on the clock. I was punished. Denise was punished. The person that committed the crimes and got paid to do so by federal dollars. And Tom Vilsack is very aware of this. So is Victoria Christensen. So is the current chief of the Forest Service. They are all fully aware, as well as the Department of Civil Rights. They got away with it. They actually got promoted. They see this as a game. It's laughed at. Although it's not a funny thing, it's laughed at by USDA. I, throughout my tenure as a hotshot, tried to hire Black people and Native Americans because I believe in equality and I believe that anyone can do the job. It makes no difference how dark or light my skin is. You should be able to have an equal opportunity, as USDA states publicly and on the website in writing. They state that they stand for the Civil Rights Act of 1964, as well as multiple other claims that they follow the law, but they don't. The message is clear. They do not follow the Civil Rights Act or civil rights laws, or equal opportunity laws for that matter, in any way whatsoever. And if you report any of these things, you will be targeted and likely wrongfully terminated. And so the consequence of standing up for what USDA claims they stand up for as an employee are severe to catastrophic, including ruining your future in any career. So the stakes are very high when people take a stand. I daily, and I always want to remember the the Black female that I tried to hire on my hotshot crew, and the severe punishment that I received in the attempt to even interview her. She was the best candidate for the job, the best at the top of the list. She was an active duty military, and I was denied interviewing and hiring her and punished. That is who USDA is today. This is serious consequence that we are going to pay across the nation because of this culture within the Department of Agriculture, which is severely catastrophic to all of us. Some of the numbers I would like to touch on as far as how catastrophic this is, because if you're like me, I like to have a picture with the explanation as far as like what this actually looks like. So what this looks like today is in firefighting in USDA, there's a 45% staffing shortage. That's huge. In 2018 and 2019 alone, just one little example of wrongful terminations. The wrongful terminations in that time frame alone equate to 35 hotshot crews, to which there's 100 to 110, depending on the year and who's certified or not. That's 33% of the hotshot crews nationwide. That is the job that I did, that respond to the most risky part of the fire line, help evacuate people, save lives, save properties, and basically work as a first responder, as well as saving properties and lives, including public lands. That is more people that were wrongfully terminated, most of them minorities, than all of the smoke jumpers in every agency combined in the United States of America. So that would mean eliminating all of our smoke jumpers plus some in another fire program. That's huge. These are federal crimes that are going on, and not just being allowed, but being awarded. The agency refuses to follow the law. This isn't something where it's a he said, she said. This is documented, and this is very easy to prove, and it is gotten to a point of almost no return. If firefighting particularly stays within USDA, we could have even more catastrophic results. So at the same time, let me go back just a second. I get calls constantly, and text messages and emails from young people who I'm passionate about, that have deep concerns to me that do not apply to USDA. They don't want anything to do with USDA, rightfully so, because they know they're going to be discriminated against if they're a darker color of skin, if they're a female, if they're and Native American especially, as well. And so all of those minority groups are not treated equal on the fire line or even allowed to interview. I've seen horrible things in the hiring process and stood up for what was right for equality, and every single time gotten punished. Well, they can't punish my voice because I will speak the truth. And a Black person has every right as a white person and a female and a male to have a job and to do a job and to be a farmer and to be a firefighter. Enough is enough is the call from young people. So I plead for the next administration to just have USDA follow the law, hold the secretary and undersecretary and chief of the Forest Service accountable just to follow the law. It's super simple, very black and white, very simple. The U.S. Forest Service right now, the turnover is extremely high, and there's a severe staffing shortage in key positions like first responder positions, especially fire leadership. But right now, at the same time as climate getting hotter and drier, the U.S. Forest Service under USDA is reaching 800 harassment complaints. That's 3 a day. So while there's less staff, there's a higher complaint of harassment instances that are not being addressed. And by the way, a little side note, the anti-harassment program in the U.S. Forest Service is used to terminate people's careers. You better not call that number for harassment or you will be targeted. That's the clear message from the Forest Service. Even in that kind of culture, the number is that high. That is significantly high. So as CJ has said in the past, regarding the orchard of bad apples. We have such a big orchard of rotten apples in USDA that the next administration needs to basically clean house, especially in leadership, to put people of diversity who would be incredible in these positions and would follow civil rights laws and would follow the laws of the land, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964. These are very straightforward laws and very easy to follow. There are Black farmers right now who want to work and farm the land immediately. Call a national emergency if we have to, give them their land back, pay for their damages, and allow them to an equal opportunity, including an equal opportunity at the application pages, number of pages. If it's 2 for white people, it needs to be 2 for Black people, not this discrepancy of a different number. Same with female firefighters. No more of this, me working for a decade on a task book and a white male working 6 months. That is absolutely ridiculous. And so make it equal as far as the next chief of the Forest Service, and as well as the next person who would be filling in behind Tom Vilsack, because he has failed all of diversity, and he has failed following civil rights law. And that's just plain and simple. I think we wouldn't be here today if USDA was following the law. We wouldn't need to have this conversation in the future either.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Pamela. Before we close, I would like to, CJ, what do you think about what Pamela is saying? And then right after that, Andrew out there in Chicago, I want you to chime in.
I think it highlights that this culture of rot, as she said, like I said, the rotten apples. It's not just one bad apple. We're seeing a systematic culture that is toxic from the inside out. And beyond that, it's ironic because the right-wing argument, and in this case, even like I said, the Democratic administration with Vilsack, is that they're trying to pick the most qualified people. But as Pamela laid out, this is going to end up weakening every position because you're not getting the most qualified people, because those rotten apples are not the most qualified people. Like I said, they're denying, as she laid out in great detail, very qualified people, and even penalizing you for considering the most qualified person. So if we're living in that culture, not only are we just living in a toxic environment in terms of the USDA in general, but it's going to degrade the quality of the work that they can do in general and just weaken the agency and all the federal agencies that are following suit with the same culture in the same way.
Thank you.
I would really like to, I would really like to just say thank you for sharing your story with us. And I'm very disappointed. I had heard before that Mr. Lucas had explained that there have been that this culture has prevailed in different aspects of the USDA, and I'm sorry to see that it's having this impact on people working for the agency. And I really want to learn how we can best work to improve this culture and turn the USDA into an agency that can serve everyone, regardless of racial, ethnic, or gender identity. And like I said, thank you so much for sharing that with me. It's clear that was stuff that we need to know more about. Your testimony is very important.
Okay, Gary Johnson, do you have any questions from Pamela, Andrew, and CJ?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank everybody for their perspective, because these are things that many people in the public simply do not know. And it's through platforms like this that people will be able to put a name and a face. When you listen to what Pamela said, and if you've worked in the federal government like I have, you know what she's saying is true. You know that it's there. It's all over, and it's a system, and every system has a need to replicate itself. And the more we can talk about this and get this out, I think the better our chances are if we can get some good people in there to help slowly turn this thing around.
Would like for Pamela, Andrew, and CJ Give me your closing remarks, please. Pamela, you.
Thank you, and thank you to all for your voice. I think my closing remarks are that we're a team and we're not going to stay silent about justice, and we're going to speak the truth together. And I'm not going to stay silent until it's completely changed and there is equality across the board. And whatever that takes, I'm committed to pursuing more civil rights, the laws of the land. And I ask
Andrew?
everyone in the nation to be on board with that.
Andrew?
Well, I'd like to thank everyone again for having me on. I've learned a lot of stuff, and I'm very impressed with the work everyone has done. I would like to say that I know that there's a lot more that I need to learn, and that I do want to do the best that I can to speak truth to power, to be honest, and also to be humble. So, I am very grateful for the opportunity to have learned more about the issues facing Black people, women, and other Native Americans at the USDA. And I'm optimistic about the future. I think there's anything I've seen here today, it's that there's a lot of people working to make things better, and I believe that it's possible. Thank you all very much.
CJ, look like you're going to have the last word.
All right. Well, yeah, thanks everybody for having me. Everyone else basically summed up everything very, very well. Like I said, thank everybody for their time this morning. And yeah, the final thoughts is we just have to keep fighting and keep organizing. And I believe one of the biggest problems with our government currently is a profound lack of imagination and a lack of ability to imagine a better world or imagine better systems that would work better. And I think that's what we need to do, is to inspire some more imagination and more hope in people that things can actually get better. And if you inspire that hope, you can get that energy and that spark to get people to fight. So I think that's the key.
You know, Mr. Lucas, one thing I will say to people who are watching this broadcast is that you can learn more, get more information from the websites, and they'll be seekingtruthandjustice.com and justiceforblackfarmers.com. You can see these kinds of broadcasts. You can read articles. You can read letters to Biden, to Vilsack. There's a lot of resources and materials, and we will continue to keep those sites updated for the general public to see.
Thank you very much.